I got a chance yesterday to share my story about when I was in first grade, and I held my breath till I passed out and cracked my skull open. And we'd had a contest, and I joked that I won the contest, but after that, I was no longer competitive because I got that out of my system. So I had this stream of blood coming out of my skull. Luckily, a schoolmate found me, and I woke up to, "Drew, are you all right?" And I just burst out bawling. And then I just was reading as I was doing my research over the years. I discovered Western medical science saying it's physically impossible to hold your breath till you passed out because the anterior cingulate gyrus overrides your prefrontal cortex. So your volitional choice to hold your breath is stopped, and the more powerful part of your brain takes over and makes you breathe again through the autonomic nervous system, which would be through the vagus nerve. And so then we're at this is Thanksgiving dinner table, and I was like, well, actually, I realized over the years that it was my repressed anger that enabled me to hold my breath till I passed out. And this kind of surprised people. Is like hard to believe, right? And so I explained, well, I had been forced to go on this date with this girl who liked me in the class in my first grade. And people thought that was funny, and they're like, really? And it's I explained the date. Like we went ice skating, and then I sat on her floor. I was eating golden fish crackers on the carpet with her mom watching over. And anyway, of course, I didn't mention that there's a great book by Michael Lessie called Heroes, and I cite this in my 2012 book, where he's a professor at Hampshire College, where I went for my first year of school, and he studied all these like totally normal people who then suddenly did this like extreme physical acts of heroism, like superhuman strength. And there was no way to explain how they were able to do this. But when he studied each of their lives, he discovered they each of them had this like really strong repressed emotional energy. And somebody else I cite in my book is Nandor Fodor, and I had happened upon his books because that's what I did in the cities, as I just hunted down books all the time. And Nandor Fodor, he was a colleague of Freud, but he focused on psychic paranormal research, and his whole claim was that the paranormal spiritual powers are from this repressed emotional energy, and that's why poltergeists happen mainly around young females. Now, when you study radical anthropology, also, which I cite in my 2012 book, the research group of Chris Knight and Camilla Power and Jerome Powell and Ian Watts and Megan Beasley, they're all focused on how the first menstruation is when the female has the strongest um, like spiritual energy and synchronized with the lunar cycle. And so originally humans worshipped this energy, and it's what was called numb energy. And in Taoism, that's the Jing energy. So it's based on what they call Wan Jing, is when it's unified with the Wan Shen and the Wan Qi. And so the Wan Shen is your spirit that's connected with your soul through the Wan Qi. And the Wan Qi is sort of like what I end up calling the magnetic moment of the virtual photons. So it's like your future stored in your as your potential energy in your body through the heart as the Wan Qi. And so this is what enables precognitive visions also. So then when you study Olivier Costa de Beauregard, who was the protege of Louis de Broglie, his whole claim is that all of the paranormal spiritual powers are from precognition originally. Like that's the like original force is this precognitive what's called the quantum potential by David Bohm, but it was called the pilot wave by De Broglie. And then when you combine that with relativity, it's combined through non-commutativity. So I discovered this new physicist this morning or last night, I guess. Um, he's a philosopher of science, and he's talking about Einsteinian physics. And he mentioned how the Lorentzian invariance changes based on your um, fra- frame measure of space time. And this is the big point of Alberto Martinez is that in relativity, the Lorentz invariance is actually non-commutative. And that non-commutativity is pretty much like ignored by most physicists because nobody wants to deal with the non-commutative math. But Alberto Martinez, he also wrote a book called Negative Math that I read recently where he's focusing on that non-commutative math. And he's saying, well, look, we can have this non-commutative math and it explains the physics better. And then I discovered James B. Carroll recently. I think that's his last name. But he's has a research group out of Australia, and he says the same thing where the non-commutativity enables unification of relativity and quantum physics. So you essentially have this five-dimensional black hole universe, and this is also what what's his name Paul Wesson realized in his final research um, about 10 years ago. He started getting into Louis de Broglie, and he realized that the universe is this five-dimensional black hole that explains relativity, but it's also based on the de Broglie quantum physics, so the quantum potential. And he also said this explains spiritual phenomenon. And so that's really fascinating that the non-commutativity, it's what Basil J. Hiley focused on as the secret truth of the de Broglie-Bohm physics. And so even most physicists who accept the de Broglie-Bohm model, they do not focus on the non-commutativity. And yet, if you do realize it's non-commutative, then you realize that this also explains the spiritual phenomenon in quantum biology. And so you end up getting when you get somebody like Nandor Fodor, the um, when you tap into that like repressed emotional energy that then becomes this heroic ability to control your autonomic nervous system through the vagus nerve, eventually what happens is you literally like crack open your skull like I did when I was in first grade. Um, but you there was a great book by Daniel Pinchbeck called Breaking Open the Head about his psychedelic experiments. But that's literally what it feels like when you open up the third eyes. You like when I did it, I tested it with strong ayahuasca, and I heard it sounded like a gunshot, but I might have just hit my head. But but the kundalini going up into the pineal gland, and it cracks open the pineal gland, and then you start seeing the astral light, and you enter this realm where the external and internal reality are interwoven, and so is the future and past is interwoven. And so the Wan Chi is actually impersonal, and it's completely interwoven with your physiology as the Wan Jing, so this emotional energy. And so you're basically like burning up your life force energy that's like your libido. And so Freud could not really accept this, but Nandor Fodor was willing to take that step where he's like, no, actually, the libido can be sublimated. If it's repressed and stored up enough, eventually it'll get sublimated and like projected, and it can be projected subconsciously. And the whole poltergeist claim was like, well, then these other spirits could like feed off it. And that's one of the claims in Taoist meditation also. This guy, Master Ni Hua Ching, he's out of Los Angeles, and one of his books says you should not sleep on your back if you're, realize this truth or reality, because the spirits will feed off you, off your energy, off your like etheric emotional energy if you sleep on your back. Um, and so in Taoists, they say you should sleep on your side. I can't remember which side it is, but they call it like the dragon and the tiger or something, where you're curled up, and you have to meditate to prepare for sleep and purify your energy and then control your dreams and stuff like that. And so this like initiation into what was called original creation or dream time of the dragon or rainbow snake is then detailed in the radical anthropology research group as being found around the world, based on this female life force energy. So in Taoism, the female is considered yang internally, and it's based on that vagus nerve, reptilian right side vagus nerve connection to the autonomic nervous system. So that's what gets activated strongly if you hold your breath too long, like with Wim Hof. He describes having a near-death experience when he was underwater trying to get out of the ice and trying to break some record. And he started to see the bright light because his spirit was starting to leave his body. And so he had that Wan Shen activation of his soul, opening up his third eye and accessing the Wan Qi. And luckily, he was able to get out from under the ice. I can't remember if somebody helped him out or if he just found it at the last minute, but that's that extreme level of the vagus nerve activation from holding the breath too long. And so anyway, I just wanted to put a shout out there to Nandor Fodor because somebody mentioned him in a podcast on the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast that Mark Steves does, Mark Palmer Steves. And they couldn't really remember his name. They're like, it's Fodor or Nandor, because he's got that Hungarian name, I think. He's a great writer, though. His books are really fun to read. And he's most famous for the talking mongoose story about Jeff, the talking mongoose, and whether the mongoose could really talk or whether the talking was like a subconscious, projection of the young children in the family or something. Anyway, it's basically, we've lost touch with this sacred energy, and instead we're like a culture of psychic vampires that is evil, unfortunately. And that developed around the world from patriarchal plow-based farming with the subsequent ecological destruction and all that. So it's pretty harsh reality to learn, that's cut us off.